Rain battered the rusted rooftop of the orphanage like a war drum. Inside, Sister Marla's candle trembled in the dark corridor as her footsteps slowed outside the nursery door. On the floor, wrapped in a blood-stained shawl, a newborn wailed. Alone, abandoned. No note. No name. Just a strange birthmark on the boy's shoulder. A perfect spiral of ash-colored skin. Sister Marla whispered, "Dear God," and reached for him, but stopped mid-motion, eyes locked on the mark. Years later, that boy, Elias, would stare into a stranger's eyes across a burning marketplace, and the man would freeze. His lips trembled as he muttered, "That mark, it can't be." In that instant, Elias's world split open, not because he recognized the man, but because the man recognized. In the silence that followed, Elias could hear nothing but his own heartbeat. The man didn't speak again. He just stepped back, eyes filled with a fear Elias couldn't name. People rushed past them shouting, but in that frozen moment, it felt like the world had stopped. Elias glanced down. His tunic had slipped slightly, revealing the strange spiral. The man's gaze locked onto it again, and then, without another word, he turned and vanished into the crowd. Elias stood paralyzed, questions tightening around his throat. Who was that man? Why did he look at Elias like that? And why did that damn mark suddenly feel like it was burning into his skin? That night, Elias sat on the rooftop of the old orphanage, the same place he'd hidden as a child whenever the world felt too big. The wind whipped through his hair as he clutched a piece of cloth, the shawl he'd been found in. He had kept it all these years, though it brought more confusion than comfort. Staring at the sky, he whispered, "Who am I really?" He remembered the stranger's eyes, recognition, terror, guilt. Something in that moment felt ancient. Elias's fingers traced the spiral on his skin, and for the first time he noticed the raised edge, the subtle warmth. It pulsed, faint but rhythmic, as if it held a memory he could no longer ignore. Sister Marla watched from the window below. She had always known this day would come. She remembered the night Elias arrived, the terror she felt when she saw that mark, the way her hand instinctively recoiled. She had never told him. Not once. But now she could feel the past stirring. That mark was not just a birth defect. It was a symbol. A warning. She opened a hidden drawer and took out a faded letter sealed in red wax, untouched for 18 years. Her fingers trembled. "Forgive me," she whispered to no one, eyes wet. "You were never supposed to stay here this long." She looked up at the rooftop. "And he was never supposed to find you." The next morning, Elias awoke to find Sister Marla waiting by the staircase, the sealed letter in her hands. She didn't speak, just handed it to him. He stared at the seal, heart pounding. "What is this?" he asked. Marla's voice cracked. "Answers." With shaking hands, Elias broke the wax and unfolded the brittle paper. The handwriting was foreign, curved, and elegant. But those words scorched through him like fire. "To the one born under the mark, they will return for you when the flames rise. You are not lost. You are hidden." His vision blurred. Return? Hidden. What flames? He looked up at Marla, but she was already walking away, whispering something that sounded like a prayer. Later that day, Elias sat alone in the orphanage attic, surrounded by old trunks and forgotten memories. Dust swirled in shafts of fading light, and the letter trembled in his hand. "Born under the mark," he repeated, voice dry. As his eyes scanned the brittle paper again, something slipped from between the folds. A second note, smaller, older. Its edges were burnt, and it carried a faint scent of smoke. It read, "He watches from below. When the bloodline awakens, so will the past. You." Elias felt something shift underfoot. He moved an old rug, revealing warped floorboards. One creaked differently. With trembling fingers he pried it up, and there in the darkness beneath lay a rusted metal box, sealed with wax and carved with the same spiral. His breath caught. What were you hiding from me, Sister Marla? Elias sat cross-legged with the metal box before him. He stared at the seal, hesitant to break it, but something inside urged him forward. The wax cracked under his touch, and inside he found old photographs, parchment scrolls, and a leather-bound journal marked with initials. R.E. He flipped through pages filled with sketches of the spiral maps and notes in a language he didn't understand. But one photograph stopped him cold. A woman holding a newborn, the same mark clearly visible on the baby's shoulder. The woman looked familiar, too familiar. Her eyes were his. "Mother?" he whispered, barely believing his own voice. The world tilted. Not because he had found a face, but because that face had never existed in his memory. Until now. Elias raced down the narrow stairs, clutching the photograph, journal, and scrolls. He found Sister Marla in the chapel, lighting candles with a shaking hand. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, voice cracking. She turned slowly, guilt etched deep into every wrinkle. "Because it was not safe," she said. Elias stepped forward, holding up the photograph. "This is my mother, isn't it?" Marla's eyes filled with tears. "Her name was Rhiannon. She left you here because they were hunting her. And when she vanished, I thought it was over." Elias stared at her. "Hunting her? Who?" Sister Marla whispered. "Those who bear the mark are not abandoned. They are hidden for their own protection. Your birthright is not just a mystery, it is a threat." Night fell hard. Elias stood alone at the edge of the old woods behind the orphanage, journal and scrolls strapped to his side. The trees whispered, and wind rustled the pages as he read. Symbols from the scroll matched the ones etched in the margins of the journal, locations, names, events, all pointing toward a place deep in the forest. Suddenly a whisper, real, not imagined, broke through the trees. "He carries the flame." Elias spun around. A cloaked figure emerged from the dark, face hidden. "You've been watched since birth," the voice rasped. "The mark is not just a sign, it is a key." Elias stepped back. "Who are you?" The figure tilted their head. "One of many who waited. Now, you must choose." Elias stared at the figure, the journal pressed tightly to his chest. "Choose what?" he asked. The figure pointed to the forest. "To run, or to awaken." Elias felt his pulse pounding in his ears. "Why me?" he whispered. The figure stepped closer. "Because the blood remembers. Because fire follows you. And because when the others come, only one marked may stand against them." Elias looked down at the mark on his shoulder, glowing faintly now in the moonlight. He didn't feel brave. He didn't feel ready. But something ancient stirred within him, like a memory too deep to name. And in that quiet moment, he nodded. Not because he understood, but because he couldn't turn back. The forest thickened as Elias followed the symbols from the scroll. Hours passed under shifting moonlight until he reached a clearing where stones formed a circular pattern. The markings matched the ones inked into his journal, identical spirals and forgotten glyphs. Elias knelt, pressing his palm to the center. A sudden sting on his shoulder made him flinch. The mark seared like fire, then pulsed in sync with the ground beneath. The stones shimmered faintly, reacting to his touch. As his fingers traced one of the glyphs, blood dripped from his palm, soaking into the earth. The symbol absorbed it, glowing briefly. A section of ground trembled, revealing stairs descending into darkness. Elias whispered, "This was never just a mark. It's a map, drawn in my blood." The stairwell opened into a vast underground chamber, lined with walls covered in hand-carved names. Torches flared to life as Elias descended, illuminating faded murals, figures with spirals on their shoulders, locked in battle with shadowy forms. At the center stood a stone altar, and atop it, a glowing orb, humming with energy. Elias stepped closer, heart thudding. He could feel his mark responding, its rhythm syncing with the orb's pulse. Then he saw it, his mother's name carved into the wall. Rhiannon Eldrin. His breath caught. She had been here. This wasn't myth. It was legacy. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the entrance above. Elias froze. He was no longer alone. Elias spun around as the hooded figure from the forest appeared at the stair's edge. This time, they lowered their hood. A woman, young, sharp-eyed, scarred, stepped into the chamber. "You've come far," she said. "But you're not the only one marked." She pulled back her cloak to reveal the spiral on her shoulder. Elias stared. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Kale," she said. "Daughter of the other bloodline." She circled him, studying the altar. 2 lines, 2 marks, 1 war. Elias stepped back. "You followed me." Kale nodded. "To protect you. Or stop you. Depends what you choose down here." Her voice dropped. "Because once the orb awakens, everything changes." Elias and Kale stood across from one another as the orb pulsed brighter. Kale stepped forward, placing her hand near it. "This is the Flamekeeper's core," she said. "Created by the first, marked to hold their memories and power." Elias whispered, "Why was I never told?" Kale's face softened. "Because they feared your side of the bloodline would claim it too soon." The orb surged, reacting to both their marks. Murals on the walls shimmered, images moving like living memories. A mother fleeing with her child, warriors consumed by flame, 2 bloodlines split in betrayal. Elias stumbled back. "That's my mother." Kale nodded. "And mine fought against her." Silence filled the chamber. Then the orb whispered their names. Kale backed away from the orb, her eyes unreadable. "We were raised as enemies, Elias," she said. "But I never wanted this war." Elias looked at the orb pulsing between them. "Then why did you follow me?" She hesitated. "Because I was told to destroy the orb if you ever found it." Elias's stomach dropped. "You knew who I was?" She nodded. "Since birth, your mark was prophecy." His hands curled into fists. "You came to stop me?" "No," she said. "I came hoping you wouldn't activate it, hoping the stories were wrong." The orb flared, sensing the conflict. The chamber trembled. Elias stepped forward. "Then help me change the story." Kale's voice was a whisper. "Or burn with it." The orb pulsed once more, then burst into brilliant light, engulfing the chamber. Elias covered his eyes, but the glow wasn't just light, it was memory. Images flooded his mind. A man cloaked in black holding a crying baby. The same baby handed to Sister Marla. But it wasn't his mother who gave him away. It was the cloaked man. Elias staggered back. It wasn't her. It wasn't Rhiannon. The vision shifted, Rhiannon chained, screaming, reaching for the child as fire closed in. Kale cried out too, seeing her own past, her mother on the other side of the battlefield. They had been lied to. Raised in the shadows of betrayal. Elias dropped to his knees. "She didn't abandon me, she was taken." Elias stood, trembling. "That man, he gave me away, he's still alive." Kale nodded slowly, voice hollow. "He leads them. He was flameborn once, until he betrayed them. Your father." Elias's breath vanished. "My father?" Kale stepped closer. "He changed his name. He's called Malric now. He hunts the mark to erase his bloodline." The orb dimmed, truth having spoken. Elias's hands curled into fists. "He used me, made me think she left me." Kale touched his arm. "He did the same to me. Fed us lies, trained us to destroy each other." Elias stared at the dark stairway behind her. "Then we end this, together." Kale gave a single nod. "But Malric is waiting. He knew we'd come." They emerged from the underground chamber, into a forest blanketed in silence. Kale led them through tangled paths, only she seemed to know. "He's hiding in the ruins of the Flame Citadel," she said. "That's where they broke the bloodlines." As they walked, Elias saw scorch marks on trees, burnt symbols and cracked stones, silent witnesses to the past. The mark on his shoulder ached stronger with every step. "He's calling us," Elias muttered. Cale looked back. "No, he's daring you to come." As they neared a ridge, smoke twisted on the horizon. The ruins waited beyond, not crumbling from age but shattered by war. Elias's jaw clenched. No more running. They stood before the ruined gates of the Flame Citadel. Black stone towers broken, once glorious sigils cracked and buried in ash. Inside, silence reigned. Cale whispered, "This place raised me. Every scar I carry started here." Elias placed a hand on the door. "Then let's end it where it began." As they stepped inside, echoes of footsteps followed. Hallways once filled with firelight were now cold and hollow. In the central chamber, a throne of scorched iron stood empty. A voice rang out, "My children return, just in time to choose." Malric stepped from the shadows, face untouched by age, eyes blazing. "You carry the mark, Elias, but are you strong enough to wear the fire?" Elias stepped forward, heart thundering. "Why?" he demanded. "Why leave her? Why leave me?" Malric smiled coldly. "Because the mark was meant for control, and I refuse to be controlled." Cale raised her blade. "You lied to both of us." Malric's gaze slid to her. "No, I freed you." He opened his arms. "You can still stand with me, rule with fire, or be consumed by it." Elias's mark pulsed, brighter than ever. The chamber trembled. "You used me to survive," Elias said. "Now I'll use the truth to end you." Malric's smile faded. The orb inside Elias's satchel glowed again, no longer dormant. Flames coiled from the floor. "Then come, child of fire," Malric said, voice booming. "Let legacy decide." Elias lunged as fire erupted across the chamber. Cale clashed steel with steel against Malric's shadow-forged blade. Sparks burst. The orb on Elias's hip pulsed violently, reacting to the confrontation. "You made me think I was nothing," Elias shouted. Malric parried Cale and turned to him. "You were everything. That's why I hid you." Elias's mark flared, casting light across the broken chamber. Cale rolled to the side, eyes blazing. "He doesn't want a son. He wants a weapon." Malric roared, unleashing a wave of fire that split the floor. Elias raised his hand, and the mark burst in golden flame, shielding them. The heat was unbearable, but Elias stood tall, the fire bending toward him instead of burning him. "I am not yours," Elias said. "I am the end of you." Malric's blade cracked against the orb, trying to destroy it. Elias leapt forward, grabbing it midair. The orb pulsed, reacting to the spiral on his shoulder and filling the chamber with a blinding light. Malric was thrown back. "You don't understand what you're holding," he spat. "That is the heart of the Flameborn, and it will consume you." Elias looked into the orb. Visions spiraled inside. His mother, fire, betrayal, a great war unfinished. "It's not power," Elias said. "It's memory." Cale cried out as Malric lunged again, but this time Elias caught the blow with his bare hand, the mark glowing brighter than ever. The blade turned to ash. Silence followed. Elias stood trembling. No more lies. Malric fell to his knees, his strength crumbling as Elias advanced. "It wasn't supposed to be you," Malric said, broken. "It was supposed to be me who ended it." Elias looked down at him, eyes cold. "You were the beginning of the war. I will be its end." Cale stepped beside Elias, lowering her sword. "This isn't victory," she whispered. "It's the cost of truth." Elias nodded, heavy with grief. He looked at Malric one last time, then raised the orb. Flames curled around them, but this time they did not scorch. They restored. The citadel's cracked walls glowed, stones reassembling slowly. The orb pulsed once more, and the mark on Elias's shoulder dimmed, as if it had given all it had. Elias stood alone where the throne once stood. The orb had faded, now cold in his hands. Kale sat nearby, silently wrapping her injured arm. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Elias whispered, "My mother died trying to protect this." Kale looked up. "So did mine, trying to stop it." They stared at each other, enemies once by birthright. "So what do we do now?" Elias asked. Kale rose slowly. "We bury the bloodline. No more marks, no more prophecy." Elias nodded. "Just people." They walked toward the shattered gate as the morning light broke through the crumbled ceiling. The citadel was still quiet, but no longer cursed. A legacy hadn't ended. It had changed. They stepped outside the citadel, the forest silent around them. No smoke, no flame, just dawn. Birds stirred, as if the world had exhaled. Elias looked back once. "Do you think anyone will believe what happened here?" Kale smirked. "Does it matter?" He held the orb one last time, then knelt and buried it at the citadel's edge. The earth accepted it without resistance. As the final light disappeared beneath the soil, Elias whispered, "Rest." He looked to Kale. "Where now?" She shrugged. "Anywhere, just not behind us." Together, they walked toward the light between the trees. Two children of fire, no longer burning, no longer running, only beginning. Days passed before Elias and Kale returned to the outskirts of the village where it all began. The forest was still charred in places, but life had started to return, green creeping through ash. Villagers watched them with wary eyes, recognizing Elias, but unsure of who he had become. Sister Marla stood at the orphanage gate, her hands trembling. Elias approached slowly. "It's over," he said. "He's gone." She looked at the mark on his shoulder, now faint and pale. "So it begins," she replied. Elias frowned. "Begins." Marla smiled weakly. "You were born with the burden. Now you've passed it." Elias looked around, at the children peeking from windows, at the village breathing again. Maybe she was right. Maybe the end had only cleared the way. Elias stood alone in the chapel that night. Candles flickered in silence. He stared at the spiral birthmark, now barely visible, as if it had finished speaking. He touched it gently. "You were never the curse," he said aloud. "Just the reminder." Behind him, Kale entered quietly, watching him. "Still talking to yourself?" she asked. Elias turned. "To something older than me." She stepped beside him, eyes on the altar. "I used to think I had to be who they made me." Elias nodded. "Same." She looked at him. "But maybe we get to choose who we are now." Elias smiled. "Then let's not waste it." They stood in quiet reflection, not as enemies, not as heirs, just survivors. The next morning, Elias sat beneath the orphanage's old willow tree, surrounded by curious children. One tugged at his sleeve. "Is it true you were born with fire?" Elias chuckled. "I was born with a story." The children leaned in closer. "What happened to it?" another asked. Kale walked up behind him, arms crossed, smiling. Elias looked to the sky. "I gave it back to the earth." A girl pointed. "But your shoulder still glows." Elias glanced down. "Just a trick of the sun." "Maybe. Or maybe it's just the sun missing me." Laughter followed, light and alive. For the first time, Elias felt it, not just peace, but presence. He was no longer a mark. He was a name, a choice. Kale stood at the edge of the forest, her eyes on the road beyond. Elias joined her, both watching the tree line sway. "You leaving?" he asked. She nodded. "There's more like us. Ones with marks, with stories no one believed." Elias looked concerned. "What will you tell them?" Kale shrugged. "That the fire didn't win, that we did." He held out a small scroll, a copy of the journal's last pages. "Take this. Give them truth." She took it, gripping his hand tightly. "You ever come looking, I'll bring stories," Elias finished. They smiled, and without ceremony, Kale stepped into the woods, her shadow blending with the trees. The wind rose briefly, like the world acknowledging her path. Back inside the orphanage, Elias entered the attic for the last time. Dust still floated where memory lingered. He reached the loose floorboard where the box once hid. With care, he replaced the shawl, his first connection to life, and sealed the space again. This time not with fear, with closure. Descending the stairs, he heard the children laughing below. At the bottom, Sister Marla waited. "You've grown into the fire," she said. Elias smiled. And out of it. Outside, the sun rose fully over the rooftops. Elias stepped into its light, not as the marked, not as the orphan, but as Elias. Once abandoned, now chosen by his own story. And that, finally, was enough. Elias walked the village path alone, now lined with fresh cobblestone and newly planted trees. Children ran freely. Shops reopened. Life had returned. As he passed the square, an elderly woman looked up from her stall and smiled softly. "You're Rhiannon's boy," she said. Elias paused. "You knew her?" The woman nodded. "She passed through here once. Before everything changed, she carried pain, but also fire." Elias's throat tightened. "She carried me." The woman reached out and touched his arm. "And now you carry her." He nodded slowly, his voice gentle. "And I'll carry her forward." The woman watched him walk away, and though his name was unknown to many, his presence was a promise. Not just survival, but legacy. In the quiet of night, Elias sat by candlelight in the orphanage study. Before him lay blank parchment, a quill, and the old journal Cale had left behind. He dipped the quill and began to write, not about flames or wars, but choices. "I was not born to be feared," he wrote, "but to remember. And through memory, to choose." Page after page he poured the truth, not as it was told to him, but as he lived it. Names, losses, love, the silence between betrayals. He wrote until dawn, ink smudged across his fingers. When he was finished, he closed the book, not with pain, but with peace. What began in fire would be remembered in ink, and never forgotten again. At the forest's edge, Elias found a single, untouched stone. He knelt beside it, and with slow reverence carved the spiral symbol, the same shape that once marked his skin. When finished, he pressed his palm over it, letting his warmth settle into the stone. "Not a curse," he whispered. "A beginning." Birds scattered overhead. The forest was still. He stood, dusted off his hands, and stepped back to look. There was no monument, no shrine, just a simple stone, quietly marked where it all began. A place for no one, and yet for everyone. Something that whispered, "We were here." It didn't need to burn. It only needed to remain. Back at the orphanage, night fell. The world outside rested, but inside, Elias stood in front of the nursery door, his door once. He opened it. Empty now. Clean, peaceful, unchanged. He stepped in, hands at his sides, and just stood there. No words. No movement. Only silence. The kind that held memories gently, without anger. He sat on the floor, leaned against the wall, and let himself feel everything. The pain, the hope, the fear, the fire. It didn't rise. It didn't burn. It simply existed. A breath in a space where his life began. No one watched. No one needed to. Because in that moment, Elias was whole. And for once, wholeness didn't require answers. Outside, the wind stirred gently as morning touched the rooftops. Elias stood atop the hill behind the orphanage, watching the sun rise. A single whisper escaped his lips, meant for no one and everyone. "She didn't leave me. She lit the way." His eyes glistened, not from grief, but from grace. The mark was gone now, faded entirely. But something remained, something no scar could hold, and no fire could erase. It was the knowing, the choice, the legacy. And as the light spread across the earth, Elias didn't look back. He simply stepped forward. A single line of flame followed in his wake, then faded into dew. The fire had burned. The story had begun.